Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin had absolutely no business being a hit. So now that I've got your attention, Stairway is obviously one of the biggest hits ever written, but on paper, it shouldn't have been. It broke all the rules. It was the wrong format. It got accused of plagiarism, and it was never even released as a single. It also broke one of Led Zeppelin's own golden rules. But somehow, that didn't stop it. According to your standard blueprint, this thing should have stayed just an interesting song on an album. It never should have reached the hit status that it did. Except we're talking about Led Zeppelin, and they don't really do blueprints. But even by their standards, Stairway was something completely different. Led Zepp didn't exactly stick to your verse, chorus layout, but their songs still had a pretty definitive shape. You knew where the car was going, it just got you there in an exciting way. But Stairway to Heaven is an epic suite compared to their typical kick the door in belters. It's got distinctive parts that gradually build into one another until that epic ending. And each one is a pleasant surprise on first listen, and second, and third. In fact, this song has been listened to so many times on the radio alone that its playtime is approximately 44 years. Now, the band had laid the groundwork for a track like Stairway to Heaven before. Tracks like Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, Ramble On, and What Is and What Should Never Be all featured beautiful acoustic passages with softer vocals, which then crash into brilliant, harder rock on the chorus or solo. But these weren't quite the same. They were more the quiet, loud, quiet sort of thing, but they certainly weren't afraid to explore their more delicate side. In fact, the track right before Stairway is a great example, The Battle of Evermore. It's a brilliant acoustic track with folky, mystical lyrics. There's not even any drums or electric guitar on that song. But when Stairway comes along, you just sort of go, what is this? First of all, it's 8 minutes long. And hit songs aren't usually 8 minutes long. But the way that Stairway to Heaven just sort of slowly builds is so unique. It feels like every piece is perfectly in place. And of course, that's no accident.
The idea of Stairway was to have a piece of music, a composition, whereby it would just keep unfolding into more layers.
Jimmy Page had been working on this song for over 18 months. It didn't just come out of nowhere. He said in an interview in 1970, "I don't want to tell you about it in case it doesn't come off. It's an idea for a really long track on the next album. We want to try something new with the organ and acoustic guitar, building up and building to the electric thing." Depending on the way you count them, there are as many as 18 sections in this song, and I'm not going to bore you by spelling them all out. But it was such a behemoth of a project that it was too much to have them all in the same room working on it at the same time. Page and John Paul Jones sent their bandmates to get out the way while they sat down and ironed things out at the famous Headley Grange studio. They wanted to make sure they had all the sections sorted out and in place before bringing in the rest of the music. When John Bonham comes into it, you need to have the confidence that he knows there's a whole passage that's going to go by without him coming in. Otherwise, he's going to think, that's a bit shambolic, I'll just come in at the beginning. Robert Plant did manage to listen in on the project and immediately started to piece his own part together.
He was sort of sitting down, leaning against the wall, and he was just sort of writing. I won't never forget that image of him doing that. And then Robert comes up and starts to pitch in and sing. And I tell you, it must have been 90% of the lyrics were already done.
And then, of course, they pieced it all together. That delicate intro, the vocals coming in, Jimmy gently working in some electric bits until that incredible solo, and Robert Plant's iconic vocal crescendo. And by the way, annoyingly, I can only play tiny amounts of music in these videos because of YouTube's copyright robots, but over on my Patreon page, I upload special versions of all my videos with much more of the music in them. You can go to patreon.com/musicmongoose to see more about that. Now, there's another way that this song didn't fit into the mould that a hit single should. The lyrics are mystical, metaphorical, and vague. Nobody really knows what they're about, which of course is deliberate.
Maybe I didn't quite feel the same about the lyrics a little bit later on in life as I got a bit further down the road. Maybe I'm still trying to work out what I was talking about. Every other is, I mean...
And I find it even more amazing to think that this song was actually engineered, as Jimmy Page once put it. When a song comes together by chemistry, it is just a bit of magic, isn't it? But to put a song like this together by design, that is just pure genius. And everybody knew it too. There's a story of John Bonham giving his friend Glenn Hughes a sneaky preview of the album before it was finished. And Hughes describes the moment Stairway to Heaven came on as earth-shattering. So why wasn't it released as a single? Well, basically because of everything I just said. Massively layered 8-minute epics with ambiguous lyrics aren't really released as radio singles. They just wouldn't be played. Although 44 years of playtime would beg to differ. And also, you might remember Led Zeppelin were big on encouraging full album sales rather than just single sales. And just a side note, by the way, the claims of it being about heroin and containing hidden messages came long after its release, not so much at the time. And I'm not going to go into all that in this video because of course that's been done to death. But what was that golden rule they broke for themselves? I mentioned it earlier, didn't I? The golden rule that Led Zeppelin themselves broke in this song. Well, it's tempo. When I did studio work, and when John Paul Jones did studio work, the rule was always you don't speed up. That was the cardinal sin, to speed up. But as we know by this point, the rule book was in the bin. And so the song consistently speeds up towards that brilliant finale before winding down again. So it broke Led Zeppelin's own golden rule. It broke all the rules of what a hit single should be, and yet this song became massive. And it might be its success that attracted some legal trouble. So what's all this about a plagiarism case? Well, in 2014, they were accused of ripping off the intro from a 1968 song from a band called Spirit. The song was called Taurus. In 1997, Spirit guitarist Randy Wolfe tragically died whilst saving his son from drowning. And 17 years later, Michael Skidmore, trustee for the Randy Wolfe estate, filed a suit against the band and their label for plagiarism. He claimed they had ripped off the part and had access to it, as they actually shared a stage in 1968 and 1969. This is the part they were arguing was plagiarised. And here's the Led Zeppelin part. And in fairness, they are pretty similar, but similar isn't tantamount to plagiarism. Basically, they both play a simple descending chromatic scale. That means playing a piece of music going down one note at a time and then repeating it. Unsurprisingly, Led Zeppelin's response was that no, they hadn't copied it because A, they played different notes, and B, people have been playing basically what they played for thousands of years. It's one of the simplest things you can do in music. People have found so many similar passages in tunes both before and after Stairway was released. The Beatles have a couple, Michelle and Fixing a Hole. House of the Rising Sun by the Animals has the same. The band even presented a piece from 1659 in court to plead their case. The case was thrown out before being reopened later on, but with the same verdict of not guilty. The whole thing reminds me of when Ed Sheeran was accused of the same and brilliantly defended himself by playing a ton of songs that sounded like his and pointing out that you can't copyright a chord progression. Anyway, it didn't do much to tarnish the legacy of Stairway to Heaven. It's always been head and shoulders above nearly everything else. It fundamentally changed the story of a band that was already one of the most influential acts ever. And you can't talk about Led Zeppelin without talking about this song. It doesn't matter if it broke the rules. That is what the magic is about. And by the way, sticking with the plagiarism theme, you might want to take a look at my video about the greatest rip-off in music history. It's over here for you next.